Hi guys, I'm Penny. I'm 23 now and I already have my own family. But the story that I want to share with you happened a while ago, or rather it has been happening during my whole life. I gave up many of my dreams because of one person, and when I decided to change the situation, something tragically irreversible happened. I was born when my mom was 46 years old. It took her a very long time to get pregnant, and she experienced a few miscarriages and so on. So, yes, when I was born, it was almost a pure miracle for her, and she surrounded me with as much of a mother's love as she could. Of course, I don't remember all the details myself, but what I do remember is, for example, when I would sometimes open my eyes in the middle of the night, I'd see my mom sitting on my bed and looking at me. She always said that it was her favorite thing to do, to guard my sweet dreams. I guess her overwhelming love for me eventually ruined her relationship with my dad. She was too busy with me and never let him help her because she was afraid that he might do something wrong. She sort of excluded him from our family, and that's probably why, when I was 8, he left us. A few months later, both my mom and I found out that he moved in with another woman who was much younger than my mom. Of course, for my mom, it was very devastating and depressing, and she just kept saying that I was the only thing that kept her afloat. Now you understand what a heavy load was laid on my shoulders back then, don't you? I decided that our family had broken up because of me, and I just didn't have the right to upset my mom. However, she always tried to be supportive when I had romantic relationships, and the very first one of them happened when I was 16. His name was Ben, and he was my classmate. We hung out at my home almost every day, and Mom was so happy when he praised the meals she cooked, or when he would say that he loved my mom almost as much as he loved his own mom. But then she changed her attitude toward Ben as soon as she found out about his plans for college. You see, it turned out that Ben had a dream of studying filmmaking in New York, which was apparently far away from the town we lived in, and he sounded so convincing and inspiring whenever he was telling me about it. So I also sort of began to want to go there too with him. And one day when he was showing me some brochures and info on the internet about that school, my mom came in my room. She was wondering whether we were hungry, but as soon as she saw that we were searching the website of the school in New York, she changed her face. Later that day, Mom also decided to talk to me about college, but she was lobbying for the one that was like a 30-minute drive from our house. And as soon as I started talking about New York, my mom clutched her heart. She was like, "Are you insane? I am 64 already. Who knows what could happen to me while I'm alone here and you will be far away?" And stuff like that. I tried to convince her at first, saying that nothing bad could happen to her. But when she rushed to the bathroom and started looking for some pills, that made me feel a tinge of guilt inside again. Gosh, I began feeling like I was betraying her for even thinking about leaving her here alone. I had nothing else to do but to promise her I'd stay and to hope that Ben might understand. Well, what can I say? Despite our almost 2 years together in a relationship, Ben appeared to not be willing to drop his dream of going to New York City in order to stay with me. You can be sure that long distance finally screwed our relationship up, and even before the fall semester began, we ended it over a telephone call. Of course, it was hard for me, and I developed a kind of depression because of it. But my mom was nearby, and she tried to support me, and even bought me a new car to cheer me up. But the most important thing was that I didn't offend her, right? Anyway, I began studying at a local school, became acquainted with a few new friends, and continued living with my mom. The life there at the university was awesome, especially with all those sororities and parties and stuff. But of course, I was aware of these things only because of my friends' stories. I just hated it. Literally about halfway through a party, I'd get a text from my mom saying that she was worried about me and had to take her anxiety meds, and then I'd have to go back home. There were plenty of times when I tried to convince my mom that it would be better for me to live on campus in the dorm, but she didn't want to listen to me and always found different excuses for me to stay with her. One of her favorites was that she had bought me a new car and wanted me to actually drive it. And if I lived and studied in the same place, why would I need it at all? I always had to agree with my mom and had even almost gotten used to her way of life when I met Gus. I was in my last year of university when he arrived from a small European country under a special student exchange program to get his PhD degree. He also worked as a teaching assistant with one of my professors. And one day he asked me out and we began dating. And after 2 weeks of being in a relationship, we began discussing our future together. Everything seemed to be clear and perfect, except one very important thing: my mom. As soon as she found out that when Gus gets his diploma, he was obligated to go back home to work there, she once again began saying to me that he seemed to be a nice but not for me guy and stuff. But, my relationship was already a grown-up relationship, and we were definitely serious, and I was also a grown-up. So that time, I fought for my own happiness. I got so tired of my mom's constant whining and assumptions that something could happen to her while I'd be gone. And also, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that while I was babysitting my mom, so to speak, my own life was passing somewhere nearby practically without my involvement. So I don't know where my inside guilt went, but it was probably that I was strongly inspired and encouraged by my love for Gus. I just bought a ticket to Gus's hometown and pinned my mom down to the fact that no matter what she said, I'd be gone. Was she in shock? Oh no, she was hysterical. Frankly speaking, it was the first time in my life that I saw my mom in such a bad mood. She was crying and yelling at me that I was absolutely ungrateful for all the things she had done for me and all the sacrifices she had made, and that I didn't care about the health of my own mother and many other insulting things. Her tipping point was that I turned out to be such a horrible daughter that I was ready to exchange my only mother for another man in my life. I tried to defend myself and at least tried to explain everything to her, but she didn't say a word. So I just left the house, leaving my car keys on the kitchen table. That was the night before my departure, which turned out to be my last night in my hometown and almost the first night outside the house that I spent with Gus. The city where Gus lived was amazing, and I immediately felt that I had always belonged there. And the small apartment that we were renting was very cozy and comfy. Even though I knew that this time I had probably hurt my mom badly and that perhaps my relationship with her was ruined, I called her right when we arrived so that, it would make her at least slightly less worried about me. After that, she started calling and texting me every day, saying that I would soon regret my decision and that I had finally broken her heart so much that her pills wouldn't fix it and other stuff like that. And I was rude with her, because I just couldn't stomach hearing her usual, "What if something happens to her?" thing. And sometimes I didn't even pick up my phone because I didn't want to hear all that stuff all over again. Who knew that I was going to regret this very soon? It happened during the 5th week after I left my mom. Gus had found an amazing job, which was so great that we could even start thinking about buying our own house and finally getting married. I was really happy that everything had turned out so great. And I don't know why, but I really wanted to share this success story with my mom. I think I was hoping that she would finally be happy for me. In that way that moms are usually happy for their daughters when their lives turn out to be spectacular. But my mom started her usual critiquing thing. I remembered that the last thing she told me before I hung up the phone was that I would finally regret what I had done, but that I'd be too late. And I also remember that I told Gus back then that I had a feeling that my mom had a rare talent for ruining my happiness whenever it wasn't connected to her. Anyway, Gus and I decided to go celebrate our greatest news ever at a restaurant. When we got back home, we decided that the next day we'd catch up on sleep and turned our mobile phones off so that nobody could disturb us. And the next day we went for a walk and continued dreaming of our new and prosperous life. We were so wrapped up in this that I completely forgot about my cell phone until dinner. And only then, when I switched it on, did I find a dozen missed calls and the scariest voicemail ever. A doctor from the hospital in my hometown said that my mom had a blood clot and that she was having an emergency surgery. She died even before my plane landed. It's been a while since this happened, but I still can't get rid of that feeling of guilt. I am not sorry that I followed my love and left my mom alone. And I'm not even that sorry that I had talked to her in a rude way lately or didn't want to talk to her at all. But I am sorry that I wasn't there when she died, and that I couldn't hold her hand and say that despite her overwhelming love for me, she was a great mom. Life is sometimes pretty harsh and unfair to us, don't you think? Leave your comments below this video so that I can read them. And don't forget to click the subscribe